Hi everyone, my name is Michelle and I am the knitter and knitwear designer behind meeshyfrazz Knits. This is my first YouTube video. I have thought about doing this for a while. I have come close and chickened out a couple of times, but now I'm doing it. There's no stopping me. I'm just gonna do it. And I'm actually kind of excited about this. I'll admit I'm a little nervous. Hopefully I can kind of control that. I'm trying not to be too nervous. There's something about being in front of a camera where I always just feel a little bit uncomfortable and stiff, but I wonder if doing this frequently, maybe I'll get a little bit better. That is questionable. My husband takes the photos of me for my finished knitwear pieces and I'm always super awkward and uncomfortable, but it's a work in progress. We're gonna see how it goes. Maybe this will be the thing that like breaks me out of my shell of being terrified of like cameras being pointed in my general direction. Anyway, so I am a knitter and knitwear designer. A little bit about me. I have been knitting for about 10 years now. I always wanted to make my own clothes and I always wanted to learn how to knit or create something with my hands, and nobody in my family knit, but I just really wanted to, so I taught myself with some books and some videos, and there was really no stopping me once I started. I loved it from the moment I knit my first terrible, hideous scarf, and here I am now knitting every single free hour of the day that I have. For a long time, I just knit. The first few years, I just knit accessories. After a couple of years, I knit my first garment, and that's really when things kind of exploded for me. Just like, you know, light bulb went off that like I could make my own sweaters and I was knitting all the time. Background about me is I am a graphic designer by trade. That's my history, is in graphic design. I've been doing graphic design for more years than I'd really like to admit on this podcast, but it's been a while. And in the last few years, obviously it's transitioned more into digital, where I was doing more web design. And as it became more digital, I don't know, I just felt like I was losing the joy of what little creative process was left in that. You know, a lot of these web designs that I was doing was just, it was all sort of the same thing. Everybody was asking for the same logo, the same web design templates. And I just felt like I wasn't really using my creative muscles anymore. And I could feel it was just lacking. Like there was a part of me that was just missing. And even with me knitting, you know, I loved knitting and I was knitting all the time. I was still wanting a little bit more. I wanted to maybe create something that felt like it was just my own and nobody else was coming in and telling me what they think it should look like. It was just kind of me. Whether or not people like it, that's beside the point. It's just having that creative freedom to create something solely mine and say, this is from my brain, here you go. And I was nervous about even doing that for a while, and what pushed me eventually was actually a little over a year ago, I guess like a year and a half now, I got accepted into the Blue Sky Maker program. I applied on a whim. I really wasn't sure, you know, if they were gonna be interested at all, and when I got accepted, that was just kind of a little bit of affirmation, I think, for me to be like, okay, let's just actually give this a shot. Let's do this. And it was really wonderful. So if you don't know what the Blue Sky Maker program is, Blue Sky Fibers is a yarn company based out of Minnesota in the United States. And the Maker program is where they have a group of knitters and designers where they will send you their yarn and you can design 1 to 2 patterns with that yarn. And that's really the whole agreement. You know, you use their yarn to create a pattern and the pattern is your own. You don't have to ask them permission about what the pattern can be. You know, there's no kind of creative process there. They're just giving you yarn support to create your own designs. And that was huge for me. That was huge. Being able to pick my yarn out and just figure out what I want to make with it was, I don't know, it was a fun way to kind of try it out. And when I started, that was really what I was doing. I was just gonna try it out. So the first design I made was my Frost and Flurry shawl, which I should have brought down, but I didn't. Maybe if I can figure this out, I will insert a picture. If not, then I just look like a crazy person pointing to the side of my screen. So we'll see. But I designed this shawl, and I don't know, something about that process, it kind of awakened something in me that I think had been off for a few years. It was just the first thing where I just got to try things and swatch things and play with things, sketch ideas out, you know, start knitting something, it didn't work, rip it out, keep going. And then when it was done, it's just like, wow, this was my brainchild. I came up with this. This was all mine. And I'm really proud of that. And took me a little bit of time before I wasn't sure if it was just gonna be something I was gonna do every now and then. But a few months later, I started to get really inspired. I started spending more time going out in nature, trying to take photos of things that really inspired me, collecting images. And then as I started to kind of hold on to things that inspired me, I feel like my ideas just went nuts. So now it's basically at the point where I've got so many ideas and not enough time to knit everything. I wish I had more hands because I just don't knit fast enough. But I mean, I think that's a pretty good problem to have because I love this, and I love knitting, and I love the knitting community. Like everybody, every single person I've talked to about this is just amazing. And it's nice when you can talk to somebody who's just as passionate as you are, and you're like, okay, I'm not this crazy person that's just obsessed with yarn, that's talking to my friends and my husband and anybody, my cats, whoever will listen to me just talk about yarn. It's wonderful to actually like meet other fiber enthusiasts in person, and that's kind of what I'm doing here. You know, it's one more avenue where I can talk to people who love this stuff as much as I do. And that's what I'm kind of hoping to do here in this space. So, you know, thank you for joining. And I think we'll see how it goes from here. Today's video is going to be about Marling striped yarn. And that is kind of a segue for me to sort of shamelessly plug my newest design, which I'm going to move up so you can see. This is my Prismatic Reflection Sweater. This is a top-down raglan sweater, and it has got this slipped cable motif throughout here. And you can see I've also done a slipped raglan to kind of mimic that motif. But also you will notice that in the middle of the diamond motif, you have these 3 bold stripes. And just so you can see, the motif is carried all around. And this is probably really awkward, especially for my first video, but we're doing it. There's the back. Can you see the back? Oh yeah. Hopefully that is in frame and I don't look super weird. Okay, now I'm back. Anyway, so yes, Prismatic Reflection Sweater. This pattern just came out a couple weeks ago, and what I wanted to talk about was where I came up with marling the stripes. I've had a few questions actually that were specific to what colors should I use, how should I marl the stripes, should I marl the stripes, what if I just want to do regular bold stripes, will that look okay? Obviously, you can choose whatever you love, whatever speaks to you, but I wanted to talk a little bit about what my process was for picking out these colors and how I wanted to marl the stripes. So with that, we are going to move into my swatches. I knit up a few swatches for you to kind of talk through the 3 different examples I have for how you could stripe this sweater to achieve different effects. So I'm gonna move up one more time just so you can see. Move like that, there we go. The big thing about this was this diamond motif that I really wanted to highlight, but I also wanted it to be a little bit subtle. And I don't know. I think at the time when I designed it, I had this kind of idea of like those old school Argyle sweaters, you know, with the funky stripes. Just something a little bit fun and funky where you've got some diamonds, you've got some patterns here, but then you've also just got these big stripes. And the big thing that I was worried about was making sure that the stripes didn't overpower the actual diamonds. And if I had done just bold stripes, at least in these colors, I think it would have overpowered them. And so I'm gonna hold up my first swatch here so you can actually see. Let's see how I can do this. I probably should have moved in a way to where I could show this all on screen, but this works. So this first swatch here is actually not marled at all. This is just striped. It's 2 strands of fingering yarn held double. So each of these colors is just held double with itself to achieve the different striping. What I thought was interesting about this was how bold the colors look in comparison. These are the same colors. And 2, how, in my opinion, the coral here and the bubblegum pink here are almost indiscernible. Like, especially if you pull back, those read, you know, if you took this and you flipped it in black and white, I think that the coral and pink would look like one block of color. I don't even think you'd be able to notice a difference. And I found that so interesting because, and you might disagree with me, but at least in my opinion, I think that marled, they clearly read as 3 different colors. And obviously I was going for things that were close in tone, and it was okay if the colors were similar because it's not the main focal point here, but I still think when you look at this, you can read that these are 2 different stripes. So really quick, before I move on to the different marled swatches that I have, I do want to say what the yarn is. I'm gonna try and hold all of these up and not drop them. All right, so these are the stripes here, and this is Silly Goose yarn, plump fingering. Those are the beautiful colors. I'm gonna hold up her tag. It is a little mangled because I folded it up in my yarn ball, but that is the yarn label for Silly Goose yarns. And the colors are, I believe this is Coral Reef, Bubblegum, and Ice Ice Baby. The colors are just so beautiful. I bought these at Flock Fiber Festival last summer, and I'm really hoping she's going to be a vendor this upcoming summer because I want to see what else she has. I bought so many colors of hers because I couldn't figure out which one I loved more. And putting them together, I'm so excited about it. Anyway, tangent number 25. Moving back on to the swatches. So, all right. So we have determined that if we just stripe it, if we just do colored stripes, one after another, it's extremely bold. The colors are really kind of the focal point here. And I think for this, where I want to have the cabled slipped diamond, I think it's too much. I think it would have been almost clashing. So maybe if you wanted to do stripes with this on its own, maybe even like with little strips of white in between, that might be nice. But again, for this design, didn't work. So my next swatch is actually, it's the same yarns. All right, so this is the same yarns, except instead of holding each color double, I'm holding one color single, and then this white sock yarn is the second strand. So that one strand of white sock yarn is held throughout, and then you're just changing that second strand from white to coral to bubblegum to the ice blue. And so you can see here, it already softens it significantly, like so much. It brings it way down, but you still get a lot of stitch definition. The only thing I really wasn't sure about with this was that I actually felt like in this example, the stitch definition was kind of hurting it in a way. In certain things, I think it would be great. Like, I think it's still really pretty, but again, for this, And I mean, I guess when you look at it like this, it's a little hard to tell. But I do feel like these colors are still coming off a little bit more vibrant than my sweater. And again, the colors were not meant to be the main focal point here. The motif and the colors are supposed to work together. Hence the name Prismatic Reflection. It was kind of like the colors that go through a prism, and I wanted it to be that subtle like reflection of light and the banding of light. Enter a fuzzy yarn. So I will back that up a little bit. Let's hold it up with this so you can hopefully see the difference. So the only difference here is instead of holding the sock yarn, the white sock yarn throughout, I changed it to holding this fluffy yarn throughout. So this yarn is, let me see, I have a band for it somewhere. Maybe I might have lost it. That's okay. Okay, we're pivoting. So this is from Wool to Die For. Let's see if this will focus. And this is just, it is a baby alpaca, merino, and cotton blend. And I believe the cotton is actually just the strand that's holding all the fluff together. I think the fluff is created from the alpaca and the merino. Oh my God. I'm trying to find out where the band was and it's shoved in the middle here, so. Okay. It's nothing fancy, but that is what it is. It is that even in focus? There we go. Natural Fluff 4-ply. Side note about Wool to Die For, if you haven't heard of them before, Wool to Die For is actually kind of a great place if you just want to swatch with some basic yarns. I will say this, I fully recommend always supporting indie dyers when you can. You know, get the indie dyed yarn. They work so hard, and I mean, they're hardly making a profit, so the prices are worth it. You're paying for artistry, and it's, I mean, the yarns that they create are gorgeous. I mean, look at those colors. Those colors are so vivid. I mean, I couldn't have dreamt these colors up any better. But when you just want like a really basic white yarn to hold double with something or to practice with something, I have found that Wool to Die For, at least for me, is a great spot to buy some yarn in bulk. Now, again, you are buying in bulk. They are a dyer supplier. So I think on the low end, like I think this Natural Fluff, I was able to get 4 skeins, but that was like an end of the lot amount that they had left. They just needed to get rid of. But normally this sock yarn, which is actually the white yarn that is shown, this is also Wool to Die For, and it's just their sock base. And it's actually, it's the same base as this. So I want to say it's a 75-25 merino nylon blend. Let me just double check. Yes. And that worked really great since I was going to be holding it double with something else, and I didn't want to spend a ton of money on white yarn from a dyer that isn't dyed, you know? So full transparency, I had to buy a 10-pack of this white sock yarn, but that 10-pack cost me what 3 skeins of indie dyed yarn would have cost. So in my mind, that was worth it because I'm knitting with this so much. And then I ended up knitting this where, you know, I have this little band, but otherwise it was actually quite inexpensive to knit with. So anyway, back to the yarn. Wool to Die For, Natural Fluff, worked really great as kind of like a Surrey or mohair alternative. And that was the yarn that I held together in this swatch with the sock yarns. That was a long tangent. I didn't realize, I just really went on a tangent about this yarn, but we're back. We're back on the Marling and the swatches. So here we go. All right, so we can see here, take a look again. I think the key differences here is just the stitch definition on this first one, where it's just the sock yarn. Because you're using all the same base, you really see the stitches. And that works great in some cases, but what I love about this is that it just felt like it really softened the overall look. I mean, it literally softened it because now you've got, can you see the halo? Let's see. You can kind of see the halo. I mean, obviously, there's no halo on this. Yeah. And so it literally softened it, but then it also just really softens out the stitches. There we go. Okay. And especially, who doesn't love a really soft, fuzzy sweater? And you can kind of see the difference here even. Like, obviously this is the same. And so it almost dulls down the color a little bit. I hate to use the word dull because that makes it sound kind of sad, but it does. You know, I took these shocking, bold colors, dropping my swatches all over the place, and slowly just toned them down little by little. So extra bold, little less bold, way less bold. And that is essentially how I picked how I wanted to marl the stripes on this sweater. Now, with that being said, I did have testers who used stripes and didn't marl, and I actually thought those turned out really well too, and it was great to see that because it's not something I would have thought to do. And the motif actually still showed up really well. But for this whole vibe that I wanted to go for, I really wanted a faded stripe. I think there's something I was feeling about kind of that like old school kind of striped vibe. And that's how I achieved it. So I'll show my other swatches here of like when I finally decided what yarns I wanted to hold together. So I wanted to hold the natural fluff with, you know, with these guys. This was the swatch. I keep showing it upside down. This was the swatch we achieved. And if you're curious about different colors, obviously, you know, I always recommend swatching when you're playing with colors and trying to see what colors go together. I initially swatched with all the colors I bought from Silly Goose Yarn, and this was before I'd even come up with the diamond motif too. I was actually just playing around with the cabling and I put in the different colors, and you can see here how even though, you know, you can buy colors from the same dyer in the same kind of period of time, they could be in their like in a color theme together, but still maybe not work for the vibe that you are going for. And in my opinion, the purple and the yellow they kind of stood out a little bit. I feel like the purple is just a little too harsh. What I loved about the Marling, again, was the softness of it. But here with the purple, it just feels very stark. Like that purple feels like a really high contrast against that white, which was so not what I was going for. And then the yellow, I'm back and forth actually on the yellow, because the yellow, it's quite neon, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. And if I kind of tuck that, I almost actually did that. This was almost going to be my sweater, but I ended up going for the blue because I already had two warm tones. You know, you've got the coral and you've got the bubblegum pink, and I just wanted a cool tone to kind of balance it out, and I felt like adding the blue achieved that, whereas with the yellow, it's all warm tones. Now, again, I kind of love this, so who knows? Maybe I'll do something with these three colors at some point, because look how fun that is. That's really fun. Yeah, the more I stare at it, the more I like it. But anyway, that is how I came up with the striping for this sweater. So that was actually all about marling for stripes, which if you're concerned with marling it's really not that, it's not as hard as it sounds. Like it's literally, you're just holding 2 or more strands of yarn together. If you have knit any sweaters by like Petite Knit, then you have probably marled yarn and not even realized it. It's basically just holding multiple yarns together to create a different fabric, a different color, a different texture. And I think this does a good job of showing how even with the same color palette, just by changing the texture of the yarn, you can get a different feel. This is all with the same texture, and this is adding a fuzzy yarn to give it a fuzzy texture, even though the base yarn is still this, but that fuzz just softens it up completely. Another good example of how marling can change things is my other version of this same sweater. I wonder if I can tap to focus there. I'm hoping that shows up. I'm not sure how well it shows up, but this is my other version of my Prismatic Reflection Sweater. I wanted to do a solid version so that, because I know not everybody loves stripes, and some people want a more subtle, muted sweater. And this is still marled though. So we're gonna switch that focus back, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about that. So this is my initial swatch for my second sample of the Prismatic Reflection Sweater. And this was with the full motif so I could see it. And it was a really interesting test to see how different the motif would look between a striped and a solid version. And it's funny because I've asked a lot of people, and it's like half and half. Some people love the striped version. Some people are like, why would you stripe it? It should be solid. And depending on the day, I don't know. It changes for me too. So I love both of these equally, and they each get equal love in my wardrobe. The yarns used for this version are Lambgood Fibers. Let's see if that goes in focus. There we go. Lambgood Fibers Classic Fingering, and this is the colorway Nolita. And Fiberspates Cumulus, and this is in the colorway Pearl, and it's the Surrey Alpaca and Mulberry Silk. Side note, I love, 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 love Fiberspates Cumulus. I have used this so many times. I'm not a huge fan of mohair. Even when it's really cold out, it still kind of feels prickly on my neck and my chest, and I just don't love it. And even the ones that people have said are really soft, when I feel it in the store and put it up next to me, it just, I don't know, mohair's not my thing. So Surrey, always. I will always, always use Surrey. I love this so much. It makes me so happy every time I use it. I also actually bought this Lambgood Fibers Classic Fingering at Flock Fiber Festival. So this was basically like me using everything I bought at Flock in one pattern design, which is also kind of fun. But I loved it. It's really subtle. So it's a mostly white yarn, and it's just got these big streaks of very pale pink, and then like these little speckles of black. I don't know, it just kind of reminded me of like old school royalty or like Dalmatians. I don't know. It was so fun. But I wanted, again, to mute the speckles down a little bit because of the motif. The motif here is what I really wanted to stand out, and if you've got all of these speckles, it might kind of command too much attention. And so when you put the two together, this is what you get. And I think it's really nice because you still get the speckling, but it's much more muted. And a fun segue into another shameless plug of my designs is the corresponding sock. Let me move my head out of the way. All right, my corresponding sock pattern. This is the Prismatic Reflection Sock. It has the one single motif that moves vertically all the way down the foot, and then you stop it at your desired length, and then you just knit the toe. It's got an afterthought heel. The instructions also have a short row heel option, up to you, but back to the yarn. What I thought was really fun about this was that this is just holding the Lamb Good Fibers Nolita single. Look at how speckled that is. It's got tons of pink, it's got tons of black speckling. But if you look at the swatch, let's see if I can do this in a way that isn't totally impossible to see. All right, I think that works. We're gonna go with that. Look at the difference. Look at how much that tones it down. And I just thought it gave it such a beautiful pearly sheen. Like it gives it just the hint of a blush pink. And it works beautifully as a sock. But it's also really nice toned down. And so that's just another way that you can marl yarn to where you're not striping, you're not doing anything crazy, you're not switching out colors every 10 rounds, but you can achieve something that's maybe a little bit different than what you originally have in your stash. I actually think these are really great for when you buy those kind of crazy yarns for socks, but then you maybe want to do something else with it. You can easily tone it down and it doesn't look so crazy anymore. A little crazy, but in a fun way. And that is probably it about marling. My one last note about the pattern, and then I won't talk about this pattern anymore, but I'm getting back up again, is just to kind of say one little thing. So this, again, Prismatic Reflection Sweater, top-down raglan, folded over collar, got these slipped stitches for the raglan, and it's got a slipped cable diamond motif. But one note I wanted to mention is that this striped version is my first knitted sample. And the one issue I had was I felt like there was a little too much fabric in the sleeves. And so I ended up making my second version with slightly tapered armholes. So there's a little bit less fabric in here and the armholes fit a little bit, these sleeves fit a little bit closer to your arms so you don't have a ton of fabric underneath. Just because even though I wanted it to be a nice kind of loose, sort of boxy fit, I didn't want you to feel like there was a bunch of fabric kind of bunched around the underarms because that's not fun. So this guy, do that again, knit totally according to the final pattern, and yeah, the arms fit great. Back to me. Okay, so that's basically it for my Prismatic Reflection patterns. Again, there is a sweater, corresponding matching sock pattern, super fun. Little bit of cabling, but it's like super easy slip stitch cables, so it takes no time. What's actually really cool is my testers said that this was super potato chippy to knit the sock, which I agree. I've knit 2 pairs. Probably gonna knit more just because it's fun to see it knit up in all the different types of yarn. I knit a pair for my husband and he loves them and it's the cutest thing ever. I think the only other thing to talk about with marling, which I don't have anything necessarily knit up, but I did want to mention just because this is mostly an episode about marling and marled yarns, is that if you don't want to hold the yarns together, you don't want to deal with yarn management when you're already knitting a pattern that, say, has cables or texture or something where you're already doing a lot. You can actually buy yarn that is already marled. If you've heard of Spin Cycle, which you probably have, then that is a great example of yarn that is already marled. And it looks like that's in focus. These are 2 examples that I have. I bought these last year for my birthday, and I love them, but I don't know what to do with them. So they're in that little special corner where like nothing is ever good enough, but I need to use them. Just in case you're curious, this is the Rusted Rainbow in Sport Weight. And this one is Pop Click in Sport Weight as well. God, look at those. Look at how fun those are. I'm in my living room, and there's a big window out front, and my neighbor just parked out in front of the house. I'm curious if he can see me like standing in front of my phone holding skeins of yarn and thinking I'm absolutely bananas, but that's okay. So yes, anyway, Spin Cycle is a great option for a yarn that is already going to give you that marled effect. What I like to do with yarns like this is, I have fluff in my mouth, apologies. I like to use this as a contrast color in like color work. So what I will do is use a main color that's really subtle. Like I think for this, maybe, let's see if that'll focus. Oh, please focus. There we go. I almost wonder if actually like a navy with this as the contrast color would be really pretty together. I kind of wish I had something to put next to this right now to see, but I think a navy or a dark color as the main color and this is the contrast color would be gorgeous. And then as you knit this up, the colors will actually change and it's just stunning. And then this one, come on, there we go. Yeah, I don't know, like actually I wonder if like an oatmeal with this would be really nice. But this will basically do the marling for you. Now, you know, if you wanted, you could use this dominantly throughout in a garment, or you could use this with another marled or colored variegated yarn, but you're gonna lose some of what makes this great, in my opinion, because then it just kind of becomes noise. I think with marled yarns like this, you really want this to be the focal point. You want this to be the standout. And I mean, look at that, gorgeous. My last little bit of marled yarn that I want to show is this guy, because I actually won this at a fiber festival a couple of years back. Oh my goodness, I can't even remember the name of what the festival was, but Fiber Fusion Northwest, I think. Yeah, I think that's what it was. It was just a little fiber festival and they had a little area where you could bid on a yarn you wanted and be put in a raffle. So I put a bid on it, not expecting anything. I think you paid a couple of bucks to be a part of the raffle. And then I just went about my day, did my shopping. My husband came with me to that too. And there were these like screaming sheep that he just got such a kick out of. It was so fun. But we shopped around. I got a little spindle. Oh God. I apologize to everybody who spins and is looking at me like, why do you not know what it's called? The little spinny spindle thing. I got one of those, which I use as decoration because I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to spinning yarn. And I got a few other things of yarn. We left. And then like an hour later, they called me and they said that I won this. And so I went back the next day and picked it up. But this is, I believe that this is hand spun. It's Peruvian tweed alpaca. It's approximately 595 yards. And it is by Eugene Textile Center. I'll try and put that up there. But look at that. Look at how beautiful it is. It's so squishy. This is another one. Like I said, I've had it for like 2+ years. I think it's 2 years. And I love it. It's so beautiful. It is so textured and it's really soft. It's incredibly soft, but it's also kind of a loose spin. That's showing up. There we go. So I've been a little bit nervous about what to make out of this. I don't think a garment would be a good idea. Plus, I don't know if I have enough, but I think maybe like a nice shawl would be really beautiful. So if you have any ideas, let me know. Until then, it's just gonna sit on my shelf with my other preciouses that are too beautiful to work with. But I think that pretty much concludes my ramblings about all things marled yarn. I hope I covered everything that I meant to. I have my notes down here and I don't even know if I like glanced at them a couple of times, but the moment I start talking on here, it's just like everything just fades and I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. So I hope this made sense. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm also hoping to do this somewhat regularly. I don't know if this is something I will do every week, but I think, you know, as things strike me, as I have projects I want to talk about, I want to share in this manner. So I'll post here when I have some updates. I guess I can give some previews as to what I'll be talking about next time. I have this guy. As you can see, I am on a cabling kick right now. I really just wanted to stash bust some of my old self-striping Advent yarn. And I already knit myself a pair of vanilla socks with this yarn, and I didn't want another pair of vanilla socks in the same self-striping yarn, so I came up with this guy. I'm still working through the pattern. There's actually a few things I need to adjust with this one, which I'll talk all about next time. And yeah, actually the other top that I just finished is not even here for me to talk about, so that's perfect because I won't even mention what it is. But if you stuck around until now, thank you so much. Thank you for watching this. I so appreciate you being a part of this journey with me. If you want to learn more about me, I am meeshyfrazz on Instagram and Ravelry. And you can also find my blog at meeshyfrazzknits.com. I will leave show notes, and feel free to leave any comments or questions. If you don't feel comfortable commenting on YouTube, you can also email me at meeshyfrazz@gmail.com. Thank you so much. Bye.